So Jon Jones has hired Richard Schaefer as his new advisor. But what does that mean for Jon Jones? What does that mean for the UFC? What does that mean for Richard? Who is Richard Schaefer? And what does this mean for the prospect of Jon Jones fighting again this year? Let's talk about it. Before we do, my name is Rahul J. Chan. This is the Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. It feels like Jon Jones can't go a week without giving us something to talk about. I was literally today going to make a video about Jon Jones's Twitter activity yesterday because I found it mildly entertaining, the back and forth he had with Chael Sonnen. But then I saw this tweet that he posted over an hour ago, and I thought to myself, you know what, this topic is a lot more interesting for me, so I'd rather talk about Jon Jones and his new advisor, Richard Schaefer. Before I talk about my opinion and kind of give you guys the background on Richard Schaefer, let's just read the tweet. I have retained Richard Schaefer as my advisor. I always find it funny when people use the term retained, because it's a very formal kind of legal term in my humble opinion. But yeah, it just made me laugh, the fact that that's what he said. It also made me laugh that he used exclamation marks at the start and at the end of this post. It feels like someone sent it to him and he just copied and pasted it into a note and tweeted the image of the note. Do you know what I mean? Because why would you put exclamation marks if it was you saying it yourself on your Twitter? Anyway, let's read the tweet. I have retained Richard Schaefer as my advisor. Richard has been in the combat space for over 20 years and has put together some of the biggest global pay-per-view events over that period. The likes of Mayweather, De La Hoya, Canelo, Hopkins, Barrera and Marquez have headlined the exciting events that Richard has promoted and produced. His knowledge and experience of the pay-per-view industry and combat sport are second to none. I'm excited to embark on this next chapter of my career as I continue to cement my place in history as one of the greatest with Richard as my advisor. I can't wait to give my fans and the sport the fights they want to see. And then Chris Cyborg chimed in the responses to that tweet, and Chris Cyborg, or whoever's running Chris Cyborg's account at that time, never miss an opportunity to take a dig at the UFC, and this occasion is no different. So who is Richard Schaefer? Richard Schaefer is a guy that was the CEO of Golden Boy Promotions when Golden Boy were in their prime, when they had the biggest, baddest and best stable in the sport of boxing. We're talking kind of 2008 or something up until about 2015, 2013, 2014, that sort of period. And towards the end, Richard Schaefer and Oscar De La Hoya fell out. They fell out, their relationship became more and more strained, and allegedly, Richard Schaefer facilitated the exodus of all of Golden Boy's best fighters, because there was a time when the who's who of boxing was signed to Golden Boy Promotions, and all of a sudden, in dribs and drabs, they all started leaving and going over to PBC, and before you knew it, like 80% of the best fighters were signed with PBC, and it was all a bit like, well, how is this happening? Why are Golden Boy letting this happen? And rumours are Richard Schaefer let these fighters have short-term deals and opened the door up and said, you know what, go over there, you'll get a better deal. I don't know how true that is, but I do know that Oscar De La Hoya and Schaefer are not good friends at the moment. They're not on good terms. Richard Schaefer then went on to start up his own promotional outfit called Ringstar, and I was just going on I just googled Ringstar because I thought, you know what, let me just check before I make this video, who has he currently got on his books? And I don't even think Ringstar have a website. The Battle Camp has a website. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got a website. Richard, man, you need to step your game up. But I know in the past Richard Schaefer has worked with Joe Joyce, who's a heavyweight here in England. He's worked with David Haye, who also used to be a heavyweight here in England. But yeah, he has nowhere near the stature he had in the sport of boxing, that, you know, 10 years ago or something like that. Richard Schaefer is a banker by trade, actually. So he used to be I don't know if I said this earlier or not, but he used to be a banker, and he left the banking industry to help Oscar De La Hoya build Golden Boy Promotions, and that's how he got into the game. Now, what do I think about the fact that Jon Jones has hired Richard Schaefer? To be honest with you, I don't know what value he's going to add. I don't know what he's going to do differently to what others have tried to do differently. Here's the problem, right, with Jon Jones. Jon Jones has put a value on himself, and he believes that he shouldn't fight for anything below this value here. And then the UFC believe that Jon Jones's value is over here. So let's just put totally hypothetical numbers. Jon Jones believes his value is $100. and the UFC believes Jon Jones's value is $40. So there's a gap between what the UFC value Jon Jones at and what Jon Jones values Jon Jones at. Now, it's Richard Schaefer's job to help the UFC understand why Jon Jones's value is at $100 and bring the UFC as close to the $100 valuation that Jon Jones has, if not exceed it, right? That's what he's been hired for. The problem is the way or the landscape of boxing back when Richard Schaefer was in his prime is nothing like the landscape that the UFC operate in. Like, the UFC have an agreed contract with Jon Jones where it stipulates the purse that that he should make in his next fight. The UFC have probably offered Jon Jones a higher amount than what that amount in his contract suggests he should be earning. The UFC have had a very good year in terms of the fights and the stars that have been able to fight on their cards up until this point. It looks like the year is going to progress to continue to be quite a strong year. I don't feel like the UFC actually need Jon Jones at the moment. I've said this in a previous video. Now, going back to Richard Schaefer and his job here is to show the UFC the value of Jon Jones. Show them why it's better for the UFC to give Jon Jones the money he wants and let him be active and let him fight. Why that's better for the UFC than for the UFC to just let him sit on the sidelines doing nothing. The parameters that he's working in, it just feels like it's so closed that I don't know what he can do to change the UFC's mind. As a personality, it doesn't even feel, I mean, not that I know the guy, but, you know, I've seen him in interviews and seen him on podiums kind of talking on press conferences for boxing matches and stuff like that. He doesn't really exude a load of charisma. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't feel like the kind of guy that's going to go in a room and charm the pants off Dana White and get Dana White to change his mind. The only thing that I can think of is Dana White might like him for helping cripple Golden Boy back in the kind of 5 or 6 years ago. Because I can't think of any other reason I can't think of what Richard Schaefer is going to do differently or what conversation he's going to have with the UFC differently to what Jon Jones's ex-management team were having. But then again, from what I understand, Jon Jones was managing his own relationship with the UFC for the last couple of years. So from my point of view, yeah, Richard Schaefer needs to close the gap, but part of what he needs to do to get Jon Jones back in the octagon is to kind of help lower Jon Jones's expectations. Because, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Jon Jones shouldn't earn crazy amounts of money. Like, I think fighters should earn as much money as humanly possible. But in the landscape that he's operating in, I don't feel like the kind of values he's been talking about on Twitter are realistic. And I've said this in a previous video as well, like what is more important to Jon Jones? Making no money or making less money than he wants to make, but still making millions of dollars and being able to express himself in the octagon? That's what it boils down to. Like I said, the landscape that Richard Schaefer is coming from to join, you know, these negotiations with the UFC, where the UFC seem to have all of the leverage. They don't need Jon Jones to fight. They've offered Jon Jones fights legally. So in terms of their legal kind of requirements, they've satisfied those requirements by offering Jon Jones fights. And Jon Jones is the one that's turning them down. So I don't even know if there's a clause in a contract somewhere that Richard Schaefer can point out and say, aha, because of this, Jon Jones should either be let go or you have to pay him X amount. Or do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know if there's anything from a legal standpoint that they can use as leverage. And I feel like Jon Jones, the way that him and Malky Cow, I don't know who's to blame or who has more of the responsibility on their shoulders and how Jon Jones has ended up in this predicament. But I just feel like that they've done a horrible job managing the career of Jon Jones. up until this point, and I just feel like there's too much damage done for Richard Schaefer to be able to turn things around, and I don't even know if Richard Schaefer has the knowledge, experience or expertise to turn things around. I said this in a previous video that in boxing it just feels like it's full of people that are incompetent and inept. And I'm not saying Richard Schaefer is incompetent, I don't know enough about him, but I don't know whether he's just basically had a conversation with Jon Jones, said a few names that Jon Jones has heard of, and Jon Jones knows these fighters have earned millions and millions of dollars in boxing, and Jon Jones feels like Richard Schaefer will be able to get him to that position. But it's a very, very different, it's a different model altogether, because the names that he's listed here, Mayweather, De La Hoya, Canelo, Hopkins, like Mayweather, De La Hoya, Canelo, 3 of those names, they all ended up promoting themselves. They're all self-promoters. They all had direct relationship with broadcasters. They could move from one broadcaster to another. Mayweather did it from HBO to Showtime. De La Hoya did it from Showtime to DAZN. Canelo is effectively a free agent. He can go to whatever broadcaster. He's got like I think it's like he had a fight-by-fight deal with Eddie Hearn and DAZN. Like, he can go to different broadcasters. He can have people bid for him. Jon Jones doesn't have any of that at his disposal because he's signed to the UFC. So where the UFC tell him to fight, he has to fight. He's got no leverage in terms of playing the UFC off against another organization because he's probably got a few fights left on his existing deal. So yeah, that's where we are, unfortunately. That's where we are. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Put your comments below. Don't be scared to like this video if you've enjoyed it. Share this with a friend if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed it. And there's usually something else to say. Oh yeah, comment at the bottom. Let me know what you guys think about the stuff that I've said. Anyway, I'll catch you guys later.